Hi everyone, and welcome to this series of tech tips which will focus on ambient and cinematic electronic music. These videos are designed to give a concise and straight to the point demonstration on how some of the relatively common sounds within this genre might be created. So by nature this is quite an experimental genre, and you'll find that artists' techniques are never really set in stone and might vary greatly from one musician to the next. So really I just want to give you an overview of how I personally approach these types of sounds. And to kick things off, I want to focus on how you might create a textured ambient sound, which is really just an umbrella term for a wide variety of sounds that you'll hear within this genre. And this first tip will probably be the shortest and quickest video in the series, as it's more of an overview of things to come and only includes 3 main effects, which are delay, reverb and filtering, so just keep that in mind for now. Now I tend to use quite a large arsenal of plugins for these sounds, but for the sake of these tips, I'll try to keep things as native to FL as possible. Now I can't do this for certain parts of the series such as this video which require more specific tools, but there'll be plenty to work with in the upcoming tips. So let's get to it, and as you'll see I already have a project loaded up and I'm going to use this to demonstrate a sound that I've made for a new sort of alias that I'm involved with. So I'll play it through for you first of all. And now I'll go ahead and play the dry version so that you can hear just how much processing is involved in a texture like this. Okay, so obviously the following techniques can be applied to any sort of melody or chord progression that you've created, and it doesn't have to be limited by any means to a harp sound. In fact, this could work just as well with a synth element, for example. You might even want to try it on percussion or anything if you feel like it. And I'm going to go through the plugins and automation piece by piece to show you the exact process involved, beginning with the delay plugin. So for this I've used Native Instruments Replica, which I'll open up and turn on. And usually I would say that you could go ahead and use sort of any delay plugin that you have available, but in this instance there's a particular reason why I've voted for Replica here. And if I turn Replica on like I have and play it again, you'll hear these kind of pitch artifacts enter the mix, which are created by automating this quality parameter right here. Now obviously this parameter isn't actually intended to change the pitch, its purpose is to shape the fidelity of the signal, but by quickly changing between quality modes you can expose this artifact and use it to your advantage. This is a kind of happy accident, and you may have even heard similar artifacts being produced in your own plugins. For example, I think the Soundtoys range also produce glitches like this when you execute rapid changes in particular parameters. And effects like this might also be noticed when you quickly cycle through the presets of a plugin. So just try listening out for these glitch effects when using your own effects and see if you can use them to your advantage by perhaps automating them like I have in this instance. And so I'm going to just carry on and go over to the reverb send and enable it before I go further on the effects chain. This is just a standard spring reverb setting using one of Reaktor's native reverb modules. I believe you can download free versions of Reaktor from Native Instruments websites. I'm not sure if you can get this particular spring reverb or not, but you can use any type of reverb that suits your tastes. It definitely doesn't have to be spring by any means, but I often find that spring reverb does work quite nice in the likes of guitar and harp. I also have an EQ here on the reverb, which simply cuts out some of the high and low end of the signal. And I also have a limiter on the insert which is used for sidechaining in the actual track itself, so we don't have to look at that today. Now one thing I would say is that I find that for sounds like this you'll usually want to place your reverb on a send insert as opposed to on the original one, and this is so you can make a clear distinction between the wet and dry signals and just mix them together more efficiently. So next up I have the Filter Freak plugin from Soundtoys, I'll play it first and then explain what's going on. Now in theory you could achieve this filtering sound using any filter or EQ that you like, because all that's really happening is a combination of high and low pass filter shapes being modulated over the course of 4 bars. I'll play it again, but this time keep an eye on the spectrum here to get that sort of visual representation of what's happening. Now aside from that, the only other defining characteristic is that I've applied a bit of a resonance boost on both the filters here so that it exaggerates the sweeping effect of it. Again, this technique can be created using any other generic filter plugins, even if they don't have a modulation or an LFO section, in which case you would simply automate the frequency ranges in separate instances. So the other 3 plugins on the effects chain are only used in the context of the original song, and don't really apply to what you're going to hear in this video. But before we end this video, in terms of chord and melody, this pattern simply follows an E flat minor, B flat minor 7th, E flat minor again with a G sharp root, and finally it resolves into a D minor augmented 5. Now the top melody is also played by the harp so that everything gets affected by the processing, but you could always experiment by separating your sounds and possibly processing only the chords or only the melody, or vice versa, you know, anyway like that. So in the next video we'll take a look at creating an ambient soundscape, and this is when things will start to get a bit more in-depth and detailed. So I'll see you there.
Thanks everybody for watching, commenting and indeed liking. We really do appreciate all the support we get here on our Sonic Academy YouTube channel. So if you found this video super useful, please, we'd love you to hit the subscribe button. We update the YouTube channel every week with new content, and if you want to watch some more relevant content, just click on the videos beside me.